Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be exploring some pretty fascinating ideas about, well, human psyche. We're looking at happiness, and we've got some excerpts from psychology lectures on happiness and even snippets from a book on the same topic.
Yeah.
So let's dive right in. I'm really curious to see what we can uncover about, well, what makes people happy, right? Obviously, that's the big question. The role of love and adversity, right? And how different cultures view morality, meaning, all that good stuff.
Yeah, it's a fascinating area of study for sure.
Yeah.
Um, and one thing that's interesting from the sources, happiness isn't just this single feeling.
Right.
It's really a complex tapestry woven from, all these different psychological threads.
It's so true. It's definitely not a one-size-fits-all kind of concept.
Right.
Um, and speaking of complex threads, one that immediately comes to mind for me is romantic love.
Right.
That force that has inspired, countless stories, poems, songs, wars, you name it, throughout history.
Absolutely. And our sources describe it, as this powerful combination of attachment, caregiving, and mating systems.
Yeah.
Fascinating how these primal instincts can create such a profound and multifaceted human experience.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah.
But here's where it gets really interesting, I think. This idea of true love,
Mm-hmm.
is this eternal passionate flame.
Hmm.
Like, is that really a thing?
Right.
Our sources actually challenge that notion.
Yeah.
And they suggest that it might be more of a myth than reality.
Mm-hmm.
And they make this really interesting distinction between passionate love,
Mm.
that intense, all-consuming feeling,
Yeah.
and then companionate love, which is deeper and more enduring.
Yeah, that's a crucial distinction.
Right.
Passionate love with its roller coaster of emotions, is inherently fleeting.
Yeah.
Biologically speaking, it's just not possible for that intensity to last forever.
Right.
Companionate love, on the other hand, it develops gradually over time. It's built on shared experiences, mutual respect, a deep sense of connection.
So it's almost like finding the one might not be about this lifetime of fireworks and butterflies. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's more about building a connection that can weather those inevitable storms of life.
Exactly.
Or evolve into something deeper, something more resilient.
Hmm.
Okay.
So that makes a lot of sense. But then this is where it gets even more interesting, I think, because our sources bring up this concept of the adversity hypothesis,
Yeah.
which suggests that setbacks, challenges, even trauma can actually be catalysts for personal growth.
Yeah. It's that old saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Well, in a lot of cases, it's true.
Mm.
Our sources provide this really powerful example with a guy named Greg,
Okay.
who experienced unimaginable tragedy, sudden loss of his entire family.
Oh. Yet, through this incredibly painful experience, he found a new depth of compassion, a profound shift in his priorities, ultimately leading to what's known as post-traumatic growth.
Yeah, that's an incredibly moving story.
Right.
And it really highlights, I think, how resilience and personal growth can emerge from even the darkest of times, right?
Yeah.
But how does this concept, how does the adversity hypothesis relate to, the average person?
Yeah.
To our listener who's probably facing their own unique set of challenges?
Right. That's a great question. It encourages us to reflect on how the challenges in our own lives have shaped us. Have they been opportunities for growth?
Right.
Have they prompted us to reevaluate our priorities, to discover maybe some hidden strengths?
Yeah.
Adversity, while often painful, can sometimes be a catalyst for profound transformation.
It's like a perspective shift, really.
Yeah.
Instead of just viewing these challenges as purely negative experiences, we can see them as potential opportunities for growth, for self-discovery.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to understand this process of growth through adversity, our sources delve into the 3 levels of personality. As defined by psychologist Dan McAdams,
Okay.
these levels are basic traits, characteristic adaptations, and life story.
Okay. So our basic traits are those fundamental aspects of our personality, right?
Yeah.
Like being introverted or extrovert, easygoing, or more anxious.
Right.
Characteristic adaptations are more about our goals, values, and how we interact with the world.
Right.
And then the life story is the narrative we create from our experiences.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
which shapes our sense of who we are.
That's a great summary.
Okay, cool.
And the point here is that adversity can disrupt any of these levels,
Oh, okay.
forcing us to reevaluate and potentially realign our priorities, our sense of self. It can shake up our pursuit of achievement-oriented goals,
Yeah.
prompting us to prioritize maybe relationships, generativity, leaving a positive legacy, things like that.
So it's like adversity throws a wrench in the gears of our carefully crafted plans,
Yeah. Yeah.
forces us to step back and really reconsider what we're truly working towards. And in that process, we might discover something far more meaningful,
Exactly.
more fulfilling than our initial goals.
Think of it like writing a novel. Without conflict and resolution, there's no real character development, no depth to the story.
Right.
Adversity provides that raw material for a richer, more meaningful life story.
I love that analogy. Adversity becomes like the plot twist,
Yeah.
that forces us to confront our limitations and discover those hidden depths within ourselves.
Right.
Yeah, it encourages us to reflect on those chapters in our own life story and consider how those experiences, both positive and negative, have shaped who we are today.
Exactly. Now, shifting gears slightly, our sources explore this fascinating link between virtue and happiness, often referred to as the felicity of virtue hypothesis. This hypothesis suggests that cultivating virtue actually leads to a greater sense of well-being and happiness.
Okay, so being a good person actually makes you feel good.
Right.
I like it. Sign me up. But how do we define virtue? I mean, is it simply about following rules,
Yeah.
adhering to some specific moral code?
That's where things get more nuanced.
Okay.
Our sources highlight this interesting shift in how we perceive morality. While earlier conceptions focused on character development, cultivating virtues like honesty, compassion, courage,
Right.
modern approaches tend to center on moral quandaries and dilemmas.
So instead of asking ourselves, what kind of person should I be, we're more focused on what's the right thing to do in this particular situation.
Exactly. And while this shift toward a, more situation-specific approach is understandable,
Right.
the sources suggest that it might actually be weakening our overall sense of moral character. And they use this compelling example from Benjamin Franklin, who famously took a systematic approach to developing his virtues.
Yeah, good old Ben Franklin, the ultimate self-improvement guru.
Yeah.
He wasn't he the one who created that chart to track his daily progress in cultivating various virtues?
Yes, he meticulously tracked his adherence to virtues like, temperance, frugality, chastity.
Wow.
And he attributed much of his success and happiness to this disciplined approach.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Also a bit intimidating.
Right.
I can barely keep track of my to-do list.
Yeah.
Let alone a virtue chart. But the key takeaway here, I think, is the importance of consciously cultivating, those qualities that we admire,
Absolutely.
those qualities we strive to embody.
And it's not just about willpower or forcing ourselves to behave in certain ways,
Hmm.
The sources use this helpful analogy of a rider and an elephant
Okay, I like it. I like analogies.
to illustrate this point. The rider represents our rational mind. The elephant represents our emotional drives.
That makes so much sense, right?
Right.
So to truly cultivate virtue, we need to get our elephant on board,
Yeah.
not just rely on our rider's willpower to steer us in the right direction. It's about aligning our hearts and minds, our emotions, and our intellect.
Exactly. And this alignment often requires more than just, intellectual arguments or understanding.
Right.
The author shares a personal anecdote about his struggle to become a vegetarian.
Okay.
Highlighting how it took this visceral emotional experience to truly change his behavior, not just a, logical understanding of the ethical arguments.
That makes total sense. We're not purely rational beings, right?
Right.
Emotions play a huge role in our actions and choices.
Absolutely.
But then the question becomes, well, how do we identify those virtues worth cultivating?
Yeah.
Right? Are there some universal guidelines
Mm-hmm.
or frameworks that can help us navigate this process?
That's where the field of positive psychology comes in.
Okay.
It emerged as a response to psychology's traditional focus on, pathology,
Right.
what's wrong with people, aiming instead to understand and cultivate human strengths and virtues.
So instead of just fixing what's broken,
Right.
positive psychology focuses on what's working well and how to amplify those strengths to enhance well-being and fulfillment.
Precisely.
I like it.
And two pioneers in positive psychology, Peterson and Seligman, developed a classification of strengths and virtues.
Ooh, a classification system. Tell me more.
Right.
Yeah.
They identify 6 core virtues:
Right.
wisdom, courage, humanity, justice, temperance, and transcendence.
Okay.
Each virtue has associated strengths, 24 in total,
Wow.
that provide various pathways for expressing and cultivating these virtues.
So it's like a choose-your-own-adventure guide to becoming a better person.
Right.
And instead of focusing on our shortcomings, we can explore our unique strengths
Yeah.
and find ways to cultivate those qualities that resonate most deeply with us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the sources emphasize this empowering message of focusing on our strengths
Yeah.
rather than, constantly battling our perceived weaknesses.
Right.
They share a story about Julia, a student battling cancer,
Oh, wow.
who found incredible strength and resilience in her zest for life, her passion and enthusiasm.
That's so inspiring. It reminds us that even in the face of immense challenges, our strengths can be this powerful source of hope and resilience.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Makes you want to explore your own strengths.
Yeah.
Consider how to cultivate them further.
Absolutely. And this brings us to a concept that might initially seem counterintuitive, especially in a discussion about happiness.
Okay.
It's the ethic of divinity.
Divinity.
Yeah.
Are we about to get religious now?
Not necessarily. The sources introduce this ethic alongside 2 others: the ethics of autonomy and community, drawing on the author's experiences in India.
Okay.
And they argue that understanding these different ethical frameworks can provide valuable insights into the complexities of human morality.
Okay, so it's more about exploring different ways of understanding, what's right and wrong, different lenses through which cultures view morality and make sense of the world.
Exactly.
Wow.
The ethic of divinity emphasizes the idea of sacredness, of recognizing the inherent worth and dignity within each person,
Yeah.
and living in a way that aligns with a higher purpose or a set of values.
Interesting. How does this contrast with Western culture, which often seems to prioritize individual freedom and autonomy above all else?
That's a key distinction. The sources contrast the Hindu emphasis on purity and pollution, which is a way of maintaining this spiritual and moral order. With Western culture's increasing acceptance of profanity and what some might see as a decline in traditional values.
Right.
And they suggest that these differing approaches to morality reflect deeper cultural values and beliefs.
So even if we don't necessarily agree with or understand those cultural practices,
Right.
it's valuable to consider how they reflect different ways of viewing the world and understanding our place within it.
Exactly. It's about expanding our perspectives.
Yeah.
Recognizing that there are multiple ways of approaching these complex questions of morality and meaning.
Totally. And this really highlights the importance of cultural understanding.
Yeah.
And empathy, right, in navigating our increasingly interconnected world.
Precisely. Now, this leads us to another fascinating emotion, one that's often overlooked in discussions of happiness.
Okay.
It's called elevation.
Elevation, like reaching new heights of joy and excitement.
Not quite. Elevation is that warm, uplifting feeling we experience when witnessing acts of virtue, kindness, compassion.
Well, yeah.
Right. It's that sense of awe and inspiration that motivates us to become better people ourselves.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's like a heartwarming surge of hope and inspiration, like when you see someone go above and beyond to help others.
Yeah.
And it restores your faith in humanity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, Thomas Jefferson, one of the founding fathers,
I-
provided a brilliant description of elevation and its power to inspire virtuous behavior.
Thomas Jefferson,
Yeah.
the founding father.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What do you have to say about elevation?
Well, he described it as this powerful force that expands our hearts and motivates us to emulate those acts of goodness that we witness. And he believed that fostering elevation within society was crucial for promoting a more virtuous and compassionate citizenry.
That's incredible. It really highlights the profound impact that witnessing those acts of kindness, generosity can have,
Yeah.
on both both individuals and society as a whole. It's like a ripple effect, right?
Right.
Spreading outwards and inspiring others to pay it forward.
Absolutely. And this emotion of elevation may be connected to those profound peak experiences described by the psychologist Abraham Maslow.
Peak experiences,
Mhm.
those moments of pure joy, transcendence, and a sense of deep connection with something larger than ourselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The sources suggest that these experiences, while often associated with, religious or spiritual contexts, are not exclusive to any particular belief system.
Oh, interesting.
Even atheists can access these states of profound awe and wonder.
That's amazing. So the capacity for awe, for wonder,
Yeah.
that sense of connection with something beyond ourselves, it might be hardwired into the human experience,
Right.
regardless of our individual beliefs.
Exactly. And it raises the question, what are those moments of peak experience in your own life?
Hmm.
What are those times when you felt a sense of elevation or a profound connection with something larger than yourself?
That's a powerful question to reflect on.
Yeah.
It encourages us to look for those moments of transcendence and connection in our everyday lives.
Yeah.
To appreciate those experiences that lift us out of the mundane and remind us of the beauty and wonder of the world around us.
And this brings us to a topic that can be, well, quite contentious, especially in today's, polarized world,
Oh, yeah.
the culture war.
Buckle up.
Yeah.
This is where things tend to get heated.
Right. The sources analyze the American culture war through the lens of those three ethical frameworks that we discussed earlier.
Right.
Autonomy, community, and divinity.
Yeah.
And they argue that liberals tend to prioritize the ethic of autonomy, individual freedom and self-determination, while conservatives lean more towards the ethics of community and divinity,
Right.
emphasizing tradition, social order, a shared moral code.
So it's not just about disagreeing on specific issues.
Right.
It's about approaching the world from fundamentally different ethical frameworks.
Exactly.
And these frameworks, they shape how we view the world,
Yeah.
how we interpret information, how we make decisions about what's right and wrong.
Exactly. And these differing ethical priorities play out in various debates, such as, the ones surrounding prayer in schools,
Right.
sexual morality, and even the meaning of diversity.
So it's less about, one side being right and the other being wrong. It's more
Yeah.
about understanding, those deeper values and beliefs that inform these differing viewpoints.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this understanding is crucial for having more constructive and compassionate conversations across these divides.
It's about recognizing that even those we vehemently disagree with
Yeah.
might be acting from a place of deeply held values and beliefs, even if we don't share those same values.
Exactly. Now, this leads us to a fascinating exploration of evolution and its role in shaping human behavior,
Okay.
particularly those seemingly selfless acts
Right.
that seem to defy our, survival of the fittest instincts.
Right, because if we're all about maximizing our own chances of survival, right?
Right.
Passing on our genes, why do we engage in altruistic behavior? Why do we help others? Sometimes at a cost to ourselves. It's the age-old puzzle of altruism.
Right. And the sources delve into the debate surrounding group selection.
Okay.
A theory suggesting that evolution can act on groups, not just individual.
So traits that benefit the group's survival, even if they're not always advantageous for the individual, can still be selected for over time.
Precisely.
Mhm.
And this is where the role of culture becomes incredibly important. David Sloan Wilson, an evolutionary biologist, argues that human culture, our ability to learn from each other, share knowledge, build upon previous innovations, it itself has evolved, profoundly shaping our brains
Right.
and influencing our behavior.
So our genes and our cultures are constantly interacting,
Right.
influencing each other in this complex feedback loop.
Exactly. And Wilson suggests that religion, with its rituals and beliefs that promote group cohesion, may have played this crucial role in human ultrasociality, our ability to cooperate and form these large, complex societies.
So religion, despite its potential for division and conflict,
Yeah.
might also be a powerful force for for cooperation and social bonding,
Yeah.
a key ingredient in our evolutionary success as a species.
That's the argument. The sources discuss how, religious rituals and beliefs often create shared experiences,
Right.
reinforcing a sense of belonging, purpose, and moral guidance.
It's like religion in many ways provides this social glue that binds individuals together
Mhm.
into these cohesive groups.
Right.
And this might help explain, why religious individuals often report higher levels of happiness and meaning in life.
Yeah.
Right? Their beliefs, their practices, their social structures, they all reinforce each other,
Right.
creating this sense of coherence and belonging.
Exactly. And this raises some fascinating questions about the role of shared rituals, both religious and secular, in fostering a sense of community and purpose in the modern world.
It makes you think about those experiences that bring people together,
Yeah.
whether it's attending a religious service, cheering for a sports team, participating in a community festival.
Right.
These shared experiences can create this really powerful sense of connection and belonging.
And the sense of connection is something we'll continue to explore in part 2 of our deep dive.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We left off talking about shared experiences and that sense of connection that can arise from them. And what I found really intriguing is this idea that religion might have played this crucial role in human evolution, specifically in our capacity for ultrasociality. Our ability to cooperate and form these large, complex societies.
It's a fascinating hypothesis. And the sources, they delve into the work of David Sloan Wilson, who's an evolutionary biologist. And he argues that group selection might be a more significant factor in human evolution than previously thought. He suggests that traits that benefit the group's survival, even if they're not always advantageous for the individual, can still be selected for over time.
That makes sense when you think about how groups that can cooperate effectively would have a significant advantage
Right.
over groups that are constantly in conflict.
Exactly. And Wilson, he points to religion as a potential example of this group level selection at work. He argues that religions, with their rituals, their beliefs and their moral codes, often promote group cohesion and cooperation,
Okay.
which would have giving those groups a competitive edge in the struggle for survival.
So even though religion can sometimes be a source of conflict,
Right.
it might also have been this crucial ingredient in our evolutionary success as a species,
Yeah.
helping us to band together and create, these thriving societies.
That's the idea. The sources discuss how religious rituals often create a sense of shared identity and purpose.
Yeah.
Reinforcing a sense of belonging and providing a framework for moral behavior. And these shared experiences and beliefs, they would have strengthened social bonds and increased cooperation within the group.
It's like those rituals, whether religious or secular,
Yeah.
tap into this fundamental human need for connection, right?
Right.
For belonging. We're social creatures by nature.
Yeah.
And those experiences that reinforce that sense of community can be incredibly powerful.
Absolutely. And this brings up an interesting question about those who aren't religious. Can they still experience those moments of transcendence and connection that are often associated with religious experiences?
That's a great question. It makes me think about those moments in my own life when I've felt this sense of awe and wonder.
Right.
Like staring up at a starry night sky,
Yeah.
and feeling this sense of both insignificance and connection to something much larger than myself. And those experiences haven't always been tied to religious beliefs for me.
Exactly. And the sources suggest that these mystical experiences, as they're sometimes called, aren't exclusive to religion.
Hmm.
Even atheists and agnostics can access these states of profound awe, wonder, and a sense of merging with something greater than themselves.
So that feeling of transcendence, and connection might be hardwired into our brains,
Yeah.
regardless of our specific beliefs.
That's the idea.
Hmm.
And the sources delve into some fascinating research by Andrew Newberg, who's a neuroscientist, and he has studied the brains of people undergoing mystical experiences, and he's found that certain areas of the brain associated with self-awareness and special orientation seem to quiet down during these experiences,
Okay.
leading to a sense of self-transcendence and a feeling of merging with something larger.
Wow. So there might actually be a neurological basis for these profound,
Right.
mystical experiences.
Yeah, it's like our brains are capable of shifting into a different mode of perception,
Yeah.
allowing us to experience reality in this completely different way.
Yeah.
And what's even more interesting is that Newberg suggests that rituals involving repetitive movement and chanting, especially when performed in groups, might actually facilitate these altered states of consciousness.
So practices like meditation, chanting, or even synchronized dancing might be tapping into these ancient neural pathways,
Right.
that lead to these feelings of transcendence and connection.
That's the theory, and it's supported by the work of historian William McNeill, who has explored the power of synchronized movement in creating social cohesion throughout history.
Yeah.
He argues that these practices, whether in religious rituals, military drills, or even sporting events, can induce a sense of communal unity and shared purpose.
It makes you think about the power of music and dance,
Yeah.
right? To bring people together.
Yeah.
There's something about moving together in rhythm that seems to activate those deep-seated instincts for social bonding.
Absolutely. And this might help explain why these practices are so prevalent across cultures and throughout human history. They tap into something fundamental about our nature as social beings,
Mhm.
our need for connection, belonging, and a sense of shared purpose.
Like those moments, when you're singing or dancing with a group of people, and you feel that surge of energy and connection,
Yeah.
a sense that the individual self is dissolving and you're becoming part of something larger.
Exactly. And that brings us back to that important concept of cross-level coherence.
Right.
We talked about this earlier. When our physical actions, our emotional experiences, and our social connections, when they all align,
Mhm.
it can create this profound sense of meaning and
It's
purpose.
like it's like all those different aspects of our being,
Yeah.
our bodies, our minds, our
Mm.
our social worlds.
Right.
They're working in harmony, creating a sense of wholeness and integration.
Precisely. And the sense of coherence can be a powerful source of well-being and fulfillment. Now, let's shift gears slightly and explore a topic that's often seen as kind of the antithesis of happiness and fulfillment, work.
Work. Wait, are you suggesting that work can actually contribute to a meaningful and happy life? Isn't it usually seen as something we have to endure rather than enjoy?
That's the common perception for sure.
Yeah.
But the sources we're exploring today present this compelling case for how work, when approached in the right way, can be a significant source of meaning and satisfaction.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What exactly does it mean to approach work in the right way?
Well, the sources draw on the work of psychologist Robert White, who proposed the affectance motive,
Mm,
the idea that humans have this basic drive to interact with and control their environment
okay.
to make things happen.
So it's not just about, earning a paycheck or climbing the corporate ladder.
Right.
It's about feeling competent, effective,
Yeah.
engaged in the world, through our work.
Exactly. White argued that this need for affectance is a fundamental aspect of human nature,
Mhm.
and that satisfying it is crucial for our well-being and our sense of fulfillment.
That makes sense. When I think about the times I've felt most satisfied with my work, it's been when I've been able to use my skills and knowledge to make a tangible difference,
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
to see the results of my efforts. It's about feeling like I'm contributing something valuable
Yeah.
to the world.
Precisely. And when we engage in activities that allow us to exercise our skills, to learn new things,
Mhm.
and to see those tangible results of our efforts, it can be incredibly rewarding. It,
Yeah.
it taps into that innate human desire to create, to build, to make a mark on the world.
So it's not just about, the work itself,
Right.
but about finding activities that align with our interests, with our talents,
Yeah,
and that give us this sense of autonomy and mastery.
exactly. And this aligns with that happiness formula that we discussed earlier.
Right.
HS plus C plus V.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Remember that.
Where H is happiness, S is our set point, C is our conditions, and V is our voluntary activities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the sources suggest that finding meaningful work is a key aspect of those conditions that contribute to our overall well-being.
Oh, yeah.
It's about creating a life where work isn't just a means to an end, but a source of purpose and satisfaction.
So it's not just about finding a job, you know.
Right.
It's about finding a calling,
Yeah.
something that gives us that sense of purpose, you know,
Yeah.
engagement, and allows us to utilize our unique skills and talents.
Absolutely. And this search for meaning and purpose in our work, it might be particularly important in the modern world where traditional sources of meaning, such as, religion or strong community ties have declined for many people.
It's like we're searching for something to fill that void,
Yeah.
right? Something to give us that sense of direction and significance in a world that can often feel, you know, fragmented and overwhelming.
Precisely. And that brings us back to the idea of cross-level coherence.
Right, right.
When we find work that aligns with our values, our interests, and our skills, it can create this sense of harmony and purpose that resonates across, all levels of our being.
It's like those moments when everything just clicks, you know?
Yeah.
When you feel that sense of flow and effortless engagement in what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's in those moments that work feels less like a chore and more like a calling.
Exactly. And that alignment, that coherence between who we are and what we do can lead to a deep sense of satisfaction, fulfillment, and even happiness.
So it's not just about earning a living, right?
Right.
It's about living a meaningful life.
Yeah.
And finding work that aligns with our values and passions could be an integral part of that journey.
Absolutely. And now let's explore another crucial element of living a meaningful life.
Okay.
The importance of balance.
Balance. So I can definitely get on board with that.
Right.
Life is all about finding that sweet spot, right?
Yeah.
Not too much of one thing, not too little of another. It's about finding that equilibrium that allows us to thrive.
Exactly. The sources, they emphasize that happiness and fulfillment aren't about, finding some magical formula,
Right.
or achieving some perfect state of being. It's about embracing the inherent tensions and paradoxes of the human experience.
So it's not about eliminating challenges
Yeah.
or striving for some unattainable ideal.
Right.
It's about navigating those ups and downs, those inevitable conflicts, and finding a way to create a sense of harmony amidst the chaos.
Yeah.
You know, it's about accepting that life is messy, it's unpredictable, and that's okay.
Precisely. And they draw upon, the ancient wisdom of philosophers like Heraclitus and William Blake,
Okay.
who both emphasized the importance of opposites in driving progress
Okay.
and creating meaning.
So it's like those opposing forces,
Yeah.
light and dark, joy and sorrow,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
challenge and growth. They're all essential ingredients in the recipe of a fulfilling life.
Exactly. And this applies to all aspects of our lives, from our personal relationships to our political beliefs. The sources argue that embracing those inherent tensions rather than trying to eradicate them is essential for creating a balanced and meaningful existence.
So instead of clinging to rigid ideologies,
Right.
or trying to force the world into these neat, easily digestible categories, it's about accepting the messiness, the complexity, and finding a way to create beauty and meaning amidst those contradictions.
Absolutely. And this leads to a final provocative point for this part of our deep dive.
Sure.
The importance of seeking wisdom in unexpected places.
Right.
Even in the minds of those we might consider our opponents.
Let's say you're suggesting that our opponents might actually have something valuable to teach us. That's a pretty radical idea, especially in our current, climate of political polarization.
It is, but the sources argue that if we can, shed the blinders of our own ideologies, our preconceived notions, we might discover valuable insights
Yeah.
that can help us create a more balanced and harmonious society.
So instead of demonizing those who hold different views, we should strive to understand their perspectives, to see the world through their eyes, and to find those nuggets of truth and wisdom that can enrich our own understanding.
Precisely. And this requires humility, open-mindedness,
Yeah.
and a willingness to challenge our own assumptions.
Right.
It's about recognizing that we don't have all the answers, and
Yes.
that there's always more to to learn.
Which is certainly a tall order, especially in today's world of echo chambers and filter bubbles,
Right.
where we're constantly bombarded with information that just confirms our existing biases.
Yeah.
But if we can cultivate those qualities, the humility, the open-mindedness, the willingness to listen to those who hold different views, it might just be the key to bridging divides, right?
Yeah.
Fostering understanding and creating a more compassionate and fulfilling world.
Beautifully said. And this leads us perfectly into the final part of our deep dive, where we'll continue to explore these ideas and consider how they apply to our own lives.
Welcome back to the deep dive.
Yeah.
In the last part, we were talking about the importance of balance and how that plays a role in our search for meaning and happiness.
Right.
And it seems like finding that sweet spot between our personal needs and our social responsibilities is a key part of the puzzle.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That tension between our individual desires and our obligations to others, it's a constant in human life, right? We're wired for both. Self-preservation and connection, for pursuing our own goals while also contributing to something larger than ourselves. It's a balancing act where we're all trying to navigate.
It's like we're constantly trying to find that equilibrium between me and we,
Yeah.
between asserting our independence and nurturing those vital bonds with others.
Exactly. And finding that balance, that sweet spot where our individual needs and our social contributions align. It can be a lifelong journey. It's not about, achieving some perfect state of harmony, but about recognizing that tension.
Right.
And working with it in a way that allows us to thrive, both as individuals and as members of a community.
It makes me think of the yin yang symbol.
Yeah.
Where those seemingly opposing forces of light and dark are actually, intertwined,
Right.
interdependent. We need both, the individual and the collective,
Yeah.
to create a whole and balanced life.
That's a great analogy. And speaking of balance, our sources bring up this rather provocative idea that happiness itself might not be the ultimate goal of life.
Wait, what? All this talk about happiness, and now you're telling me it's not the end game. This is getting more intriguing by the minute.
It might seem counterintuitive, but hear me out. What if focusing solely on happiness can actually be counterproductive?
Okay.
What if true fulfillment comes from pursuing, meaning and purpose, even if that pursuit doesn't always lead to immediate happiness?
So you're saying it's not about, chasing fleeting pleasures.
Right.
Or avoiding, discomfort at all costs. It's about aligning our lives with something that resonates deeply with us,
Yeah.
something that gives us that sense of direction, significance, even if it means facing challenges and making sacrifices along the way.
Exactly. Remember, Greg, the man who tragically lost his family?
Yeah.
He ultimately found a profound sense of meaning and purpose through his grief, not by, trying to force himself to be happy. It was through facing that immense pain and finding a way to help others who were struggling that he discovered a deeper, level of purpose.
That's a powerful example. It reminds us that meaning often arises from confronting adversity head on.
Yeah.
Not from trying to bypass or avoid it.
Right.
And sometimes those experiences that we might initially perceive as negative can lead to unexpected growth and a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world.
Absolutely. And this ties back to that concept of cross-level coherence we've been exploring.
Right.
Remember, it's the idea that true fulfillment comes when our actions, our beliefs, and our experiences all line up.
Yeah.
When we're living in a way that feels authentic and aligned with our values.
Yeah. It's like all the pieces of the puzzle finally falling into place.
Yeah.
You feel that sense of wholeness.
Yeah.
Integration.
Yeah.
Even if you're not necessarily skipping through life with a permanent grin on your face.
Precisely. Think about those times in your life when you felt the most fulfilled. Were you necessarily deliriously happy in those moments?
Right.
Or were you engaged in something that truly mattered to you,
Yeah.
something that challenged you and pushed you to grow?
That's such a great point.
Yeah.
It's often those times, when we feel doubly connected to something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah.
Even if those experiences aren't always, easy or comfortable, that we find the most meaning and purpose.
Exactly. And as we wrap up this deep dive into happiness, meaning, and the complexities of the human experience,
Yeah.
I want to leave you with a final question to ponder. If happiness comes from between, where do you find the most meaning and connection in your own life?
Hmm.
What are those activities, those relationships, those pursuits that make you feel, the most alive, the most engaged?
That's a wonderful question to reflect on. And it reminds us that this journey of self-discovery and meaning making is a lifelong adventure, right?
Yeah.
It's not about reaching a final destination, but about continually exploring,
Right.
questioning,
Yeah.
seeking those moments of connection that make life rich and fulfilling. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, keep seeking those moments of connection that make life worth living.